Hey guys, we're back with the next episode of Sryth, our RPG fantasy text-based game. Um, I don't remember what we're doing previously. It's been a while for me. I did come off in between the last episode and this episode to update my castle so I can get more grandeur so I can start updating it more. So we're going to start with that and then we're going to go back to Hawklor, I think, and do some more stuff there, or we might start one of the proving grounds. So let's just get going, and thanks so much for hanging out and joining me and playing this text-based game with me. Thank you so much. Let's go. Alright, so I'm gonna you could just click on the castle here and come back. Easy, easy, I think. My cheeks swollen this side because I had some stuff done in my teeth, and they shoot you like 6 times with a super shot, like all up in your cheek. Like, I think 2 shots will do it. Because now my teeth don't hurt, but my jaw hurts and it's swollen. So anyway, I've got enough grandeur to renovate my castle, do 3 upgrades a day. But I'm definitely gonna renovate first. Keep that grandeur going up, and I can buy upgrades. Something that will give me this grand library filled with a vast collection of rare architects as well as unique and curious arcane relics is a place for those just imagined to spend their time. Why not? Eventually, of course. It's likely that many secrets to be gleaned from libraries. I mean, and we're always going to use gold because I got an abundance of gold. So we're always going to start with the libraries just because libraries are cool. We'll skip on living statues. Let's see, Eternal's torches. Ignite, command, and burn forever. There, and the torch light your entire boat. Yes, we want a lit up joint. Wow, something's going on with my thumb. Let's see. We don't need a statue of me. That's vain. Oh, what about an orchard? A map of the kingdom would be cool. I think we'll go map. And then we'll work in my bedroom after this maybe, but that's all we got. So we just keep upgrading my house till it's the most grand house in this joint. Hey, I'm ranked number 83. Woohoo! Number 7 in weaponry. I think I went down. I think I was 81 or something. So let's leave. Let's travel back to Hawklor. Just southwest. Hit Hawklor. Yeah, we're doing all the quests here that we could do. I do so believe. So that's what we're gonna continue to do. We visit everything in here, and then we got proving grounds, which we're not gonna do. So we're working on adventures for this location, which there's like 5 left. So I'm just gonna work on some of those. Okay. We'll just start top to bottom. So that means starting with a 1. With your heart pumping wildly and your lungs struggling to draw each ragged breath, you reach the foot of the stair that climbs up and out of the ancient Alvari crypt. Embark. For the first time since accepting the task of retrieving the ancient wine, you truly fear for your life. There are tips and notes available for this adventure. Multiple paths of completion. This adventure that leads you to the entry features multiple paths to completion. It may benefit you to play through multiple times to discover the best, most advantageous, most pro path for your character. Nah, I'm good. With your heart pumping wildly and your lungs struggling to draw each ragged breath, you reach the foot of the stairs that leads up and out of the ancient Alvari crypt. Here you pause, leaning heavily on your forearm against the cold stone wall in desperate attempt to regain your strength before the climb. The eerie moans of your pursuers, the undead host that ambushed you as you left the burial chamber, echo through the gloom. In a matter of moments, a staggering band of decayed guardians will be upon you, seeking to prevent your escape from the lair that they dutifully watched over for centuries uncounted. The terrifying notion of being overtaken by a gruesome horde is enough to again set you in motion. Pushing aside your wariness, you begin a careful and steady ascent of the crumbling stair, a climb that will take you to the safety of the forest far above. You've counted only a dozen steps, less than a quarter of the total that make up the time-ravaged stair, when you suddenly lose your footing on a loose chunk of stone. Instinctively, you throw your arms out to the side and lean forward in a desperate bid to keep from tumbling backwards down the dark into the dark of the tomb. What? 12 plus 40. I had to get greater than 100. You cry out in alarm as you fail to catch yourself. Fall back and topple down the stairs, tracking your head, legs, and arms during the swift, violent, and unceremonious descent. Battered and dazed, but thankful to have survived the ordeal. Is this bad? I can't see. You stagger to your feet at the bottom of the steps, only to find yourself confronted by a pressing horde of groaning undead. The half-dozen routing crypt guardians, their decaying hands clutching the weapons with which they are long ago entombed, moan savagely as they close in around you, cutting off from the stairs your only way out of the tomb. Without hesitation, you draw yourself into a combat-ready stance at the first of the risen dead lunges forward and attacks. Quick combat. As your undead foe slumps to the floor in the passage, you immediately find yourself confronted by the next horror to emerge from the risen horde. Quick combat. More skeletal guardians. You spin to your right and step back, narrowly dodging the deadly swipe of a notched axe blade. The skeleton, clutching the haft of this ancient weapon, staggers forward, its fleshless feet scraping across the stone floor as it mercilessly advances. As you step back from the shadow ring of the skeleton, you spot a gap in the ranks of your undead foes, through which you surmise you might be able to gain the stairs. The sound of even more undead moving along the passages reaches your eyes and sends your pulse racing. Continue to fight. Let's roll out. With a second thought, you bolt to the opening, hoping that you reach the stairs and escape from the level before the tide of undead overwhelms you. Success! You reach the foot of the stairs and instinctively twist aside, narrowly dodging the swipe of a rusted blade. Without looking back, you heard the clamor of the crumbling steps, desperate to exit the tomb and praying that the undead will abandon their pursuit. You reach the top of the stair and burst into the pale light of the forest, leaves drawing deep handfuls of crisp, cool air. The faint sounds of scraping, moaning, hissing echo without opening your feet, sure to indicate that the undead have begun to climb the steps. You best get back from there. The shout rings out from somewhere to your left. After you spin in the direction of the unexpected voices, but a tall bearded man clad in hide armor moving out of the forest. He fixes you with a wary stare before edging to the top of the stair and peering down into the opening. Did you find the one? He asked, his pointed question catching off guard. I had to make myself believe I was alone and seeking it, but deep down I knew a bit better than that. You did find it, didn't you? Before you answered him one way or the other, a loud hiss erupts out of the tomb's shadow-filled maw. As you draw yourself into a combat-ready stance, your gaze now frozen on the stairs leading down to the crypt, the stranger produces a heavy mace and moves to your side. The man quickly introduces himself as Gribir. Nudging your right shoulder to his left, he makes a careful pronunciation of his name. I suppose my father can be blamed for the name, he said, tightening his grip of the mace hand-wrapped haft. But neither my father nor my mother can be blamed for how I turned out. They certainly didn't want an adventure. After all, I'm the only one our family's ever known, much to the general dismay. No, you don't have to tell me your name. I know who you are. I'd be surprised if there are any about who haven't heard of you by now. Oh, well, thank you. Sweet. Well, did you find the wand or not? Asked Gilbert, briefly glances you. Yet another hiss outside the gloom-filled stairway. If you've got it, we needn't bother sticking around for whatever's coming out of there. Immediately suspicious of the man's bold repeated inquiries about the Adam now tucked safely among your belongings. The grave oaken wand you took from the empty sarcophagus in the tomb's burial chamber. You have every intention of seeing that the one is delivered to Overland, the elderly man, and Hawklor who hired you to retrieve it. A chorus of hisses coupled with several rumbling moans drifts up and down the tomb and enters. Gripper casts you a nervous glance. I'm not going in there if you've already got it. Do you have it? As Gripper's words echoed through your thoughts, you welcome by strength to keep your acquisition of the wand a secret. Channeling your power of divination immediately sense that Gripper's inquiry is not linked to any malicious intent. You sense he's come here as you did see the wand, but has no desire to attempt to take it from you. I have it. As soon as you tell Gripper you have the wand, he nods and lets his guard. With his very next breath, he turns and begins heading west, and the surrounding forest beckoning. Oh, come on, don't linger here. After several minutes, you head west into the forest, moving swiftly to keep up with Gribber, who seems keen on putting a considerable distance between yourself and the location of the tomb. At last, he draws it to a halt at the edge of a small open swath and turns to face you. I can't say I'm not just the smallest bit upset that you beat me to it, he says, smirking and shaking his head. There's no one more worthy than you to come short against. Well done. Gribber places his hand on his hips and closes his eyes, but a second later his eyes open again and he smirks. I'll give you 1,000 gold for that one. He says, a strange, unsettling feeling comes over you the instant Gribber makes it plain his desire to acquire the wand. Immediately you find yourself struggling with the burgeoning notion of killing it. I'm not going to sell it to you. Gibber shakes his head and laughs. You're right, that's not enough, but I mean considerable modest on your own, so I must assume, alright, what about 2,000? The idea of killing Gribber to prevent him from trying to acquire the one, certainly come and get burning, compulsion, vivid images of Gribber thrashing about the throes of death and the forest floor, his body riddled with hideous gashes, flood your mind now, drowning out of sickness of rational thought. While I'm losing rational thoughts, it reminds me of shadow magic, so I'm gonna flee. Bye! Fearing that the unthinkable might at any moment become inedible, you turn and bolt into the forest, ignore the confused shouts of Gibber, who repeatedly calls after you. After several minutes, having covered a considerable distance, you pause to catch your breath and to watch and listen for the sign of possible pursuit. At last convinced you have been followed, you glance at the sky to get your bearing before heading off on a lengthy trek back to Hawklor, amidst the unspeakable tragedy was narrowly averted. Upon you return to Hawklor, you meet with Avalon, I don't know. The young man who hired you to retrieve the one in the Stoneback Tavern. It was Avalon's map, a tattered piece of stretched hide, which he claims to be procured from a peddler on the road to Talinas several years back, that clearly marked the ancient Alvari Grey tomb. The map also bore a curious verse that made mention of a mighty one supposed to hid it in the tomb steps, the one you discovered in the crypt's burial chamber. As you stride up to the table at which Avalon sits alone, you again overcome by a strange compulsion to keep the acquisition of one a secret. The elderly man looks up and smiles as you approach, his wrinkled expression a mix of hope and relief. I never expected you to act quite so soon, he says, smiling. Is it possible you found it already? I give it to him. Ignoring the gnawing desire to keep your recovery of the one a secret, you hand over the carved oaken rod to Avalon. The old man gasps in apparent astonishment, takes possession of the one. For nearly a minute he says nothing as he closely studies the curious item. This is beyond even my greatest hope, he said. I mean, you couldn't possibly understand just what this means. I mean, thank you, dear friend. Strangely, as you prowl, leave the commotion, keep the one a secret to protect it, vanish the instant you hand it to Avalon. Avalon calls for food and drink, and then promptly hands you a wooden box filled with a large quantity of gold. You're surprised to discover the box contains twice the amount of gold originally agreed upon. There'll be no argument about any of that, said Avalon. As I said, I never truly allowed myself to hope you would find the one. I never dared to actually believe the old map was right. Perhaps I ought to put just a bit more trust in these things. So the next small while, enjoying a sumptuous meal, as sumptuous as the Stoneback Tavern allows, with Avalon, during which you describe to him the exploration period you never escape from the shadowy confines. But reasoning you unknown, you decide not to mention Gribber. You do, however, make a point of inquiring about the one X and what it is and what Avalon intends to do with it. The other man who previously told you he hails from Tribmore says that based upon several cryptic passages in the ancient text he's been studying, he believes the one to be one of the seven that long ago laid to rest with powerful Alvari mages. He admits that while he himself has no immediate use for the wand, he'll be presenting it to an old friend of his who was able to properly examine it. The conversation gradually shifts to other topics, and you immediately struck with a vast breadth of knowledge of Avalon possesses on a wide range of subjects. You at last take your leave of Avalon, wishing him luck. When he tells you that he intends to embark on the long road back to Tribmore via coach within the next few days, you also wish him safe passage. He again thanks you for retrieving the one. I may linger here just a bit longer, he says. I've not yet forgotten the jolts and bumps of coach ride that brought me up this way, and at my age a few awkward jokes might be all that it takes. Two of you share a laugh, and you meet the elderly man in the shoulder cross before turning and making your way out of the tavern. As you step out as the edge of the village thoroughfare, your eyes immediately drawn to the sky. Far off to the east, in stark contrast to the pale blue swath stretched out above you, a line of thick grey clouds have begun to build, threatening a late spring rain that appears poised to sweep across the hard hills. Sensing a subtle change in the air, you draw in your attire just a bit closer, and with one eye to the darker sky, begin to wander towards the village centre. Okay. Who was that guy? I didn't want to kill him, so I had to leave. Oh well. It's been 4 days since I've saved. Let's see if I have any experience. Nope. I could trade in budget tokens for experience. What would do 413 for that's not that much experience. But I'll take it. Yeah, I like the nice round number. 2500. Adventure tokens. Skills. give me one of these. I'm doing slashing, so give me one of these. So we'll start just making it to 90. Okay, we gotta do something with powers. Conjuration, destruction, divination, purification, gating. Alright, we gotta do something with gating or illusion. Take this one. Power. Powers. Oh, it's gonna let me get it. So, but there's a arm appreciate. Greatly. Alright, more adventures, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I was like, is it going down? Because it didn't seem like it's snowy dusk. Scaled. Okay, let's go. And so begins snowy dusk. Ever since discovering the abandoned wagon, his horses cut free and the telltale sign of a brief but violent struggle evident in the surrounding crimson spattered snow, you've been determined to discover what terrible events recently took place here on this lonely stretch of the forest road east of Hawklor. A mottled trail of tracks and a lace initially blood led you off the road into the snowy dust-shrouded wood to the north. Moving slowly, your steps muffled by the shin-deep blanket of white draped over the forest floor, you press on along the well-trodden trail, your eyes continually scouring the deepening gloom for the first sign of movement. You reach the end of the path and steal onto a broad outcropping of icy rock perched on the lip of the ledge. You shiver as your eyes struggle against fading light of the dust to scour the snowball forest. At the base of the outcropping, perhaps a dozen feet below, the line of indistinct tracks you've been following continues to meander to the north and east. Suddenly, something stirs in the edge of the thicket several yards to your left, instinctively whipping your head in the direction of the movement. Your heart nearly skips a beat when your eyes descend upon an unexpected and unwelcome sight. Creeping through the snow-covered foliage, their ragged, filthy attire seems inadequate to ward off winter's chill are 3 cave goblins. The undesirable trio seem well aware that your presence, although they do not display any of the savage aggressions otherwise typical of their kin. You're left to believe that the 3 goblins are attempting to pass through without incident. As you stand staring at the goblins, you notice something else. 2 of the creatures have sustained serious wounds, obviously the result of some sort of brutalities recently visited upon them. Blood covers the hide vest of 2 of the goblins and streaks the grey flesh of their uncovered arms and legs. Though their wide, calculating eyes remain fixed on you, the goblins do not stop. They continue to skirt the edge of the sprawling laurel patch as they head back in the direction of the road you abandoned only a few minutes ago. That's where it lay then. Move swiftly, attempt to maneuver yourself in a position to prevent the goblins from escaping. Attempt to maneuver yourself in a position which you can intercept the 3 goblins. Much you dismay, however, the ragged creatures reveal themselves quite adept at navigating the rugged, treacherous terrain and easily evade you. In a matter of moments, the goblins are around the edge of the thicket and disappear into the snow gloom of the forest. The bear wretched of the nearby woodland giants wrestling in the frigid breeze. You quickly decide upon your next course of action. Let's continue. Determined to continue following the track, you cautiously descend the outcropping at the end of the trail and begin to pick up the path of prints, which now much less distinct at the base of the ledge. Doing your best to ignore the frigid wind biting at your spare flesh, you press on through the snowy twilight, hoping if there were indeed someone in need of your help, you are not already too late. You press on through the forest, ever mindful of the unsettling fact that the snowy dusk is now rapidly giving way to a grim spectre of windy, frigid night. Suddenly, when it seems you no longer clearly discern the path, trail of footprints, you hear shouting from somewhere to the north. The sound, though unmistakably desperate, is muffled perhaps by the snow and desperate and difficult to precisely locate. Within a second, but you strike out to believe the direction of the last cry, your heart pounding in ever since alert. After trudging through the knees-deep snow for nearly 100 yards, you arrived at a broad wall of firs, a tangle of bramble and bracken entwines at the base of the ancient trees, making continued progress along your current course all but impossible. Suddenly another cry rings out, this time from the east, louder and more distinct than that those you heard moments ago. You're now certain that the voice is that of a man. Striking out in the direction of the sound, you've They were less than 50 yards when the source of the desperate calls is at last revealed. In the midst of the small clearing, slumped up against a snow-covered boulder, is a body riddled with numerous bloody gashes as a large man dressed in furs. The corpses of 6 cave goblins lie strewn about him in the blood-spattered snow. The man moans and draws a ragged breath as his fearful gaze focuses on something near the edge of the open space. Realizing at once the man is severely wounded and likely near to death, you're about to rush to his aid when you spot what must obviously be the source of his profound terror. A hulking ogre, clad in bearskin, a heavy wooden club resting on its shoulder. It is moving slowly around the perimeter of the clearing. The fearsome beast, its wide eyes peering into the snowy night, stops and sniffs at the air. Even from a distance you can plainly hear the deep rumble of the laboured breathing. Let's do divination. Channel the power of divination so you immediately says the ogre does not mean any harm to the wounded man. Okay, let's go talk to him then. Rush in the clearing and reach the wounded man. He turns and looks up to you as you approach and offers a weak, fleeting smile. He senses fear and relief behind the forced expression. Don't, he gasps, closing his eyes tightly. Don't. You instinctively turn your attention to the ogre who remains in the far side of the field, still sniffing in the air. The towering creature's crude bearskin tunic collecting the snow dropping from the overhead. Bows, turns, and briefly glances in your direction before resuming his slow meandering along the forest edge. Returning your gaze to the wounded man, your eyes pass over the corpse of the slain goblins. The bloody remains of the 6 wild creatures lie scattered across the snowy ground. Leave him. This is a man at your feet, his eyes still closed. He killed me, save me, leave him be. Now around the wounded man is drizzles of blood, several blood glasses, as legs and torso attempt to attest to the savagery of the goblins that now lie dead around him. The ogre shouts loudly and turns to face you. Your wide eyes narrowing to you, no more than a broad black slits. Let's help the guy. Do your best to ignore the unwanted attention of the ogre. You crouch next to the fur-clad man and examine his wounds. He's lost an enormous amount of blood and appears to be barely clinging to life. Moses' eyes fix you with a puzzled look. Where's my son? Gas, is he alright? Is he here? Not immediately answer a desperate query. You glance back at the looming ogre, suddenly as if alert something that escapes your sense of the beast whips his head in the north and snorts loudly. Then, without even looking back, the ogre bounds off in that direction, each of his lengthy strides covering what must be almost 10 feet. In a matter of only a few minutes, the ogre's lost from sight in the frigid gloom of the forest. Where's my son? Repeats the man. He isn't here, is he? He ran when the goblins came at us. He's fast, lad. They couldn't have caught him. As you shrugged upon the wounds and stemmed the bleeding, the man begins babbling. Can I use restoration? Oh, I didn't mean to skip that. Genuine power of restoration. Place your hands on Birigor's shoulder almost at once. His warmth passes off through your body into the roomy riddled torso of the fur-clad man. His eyes are wide and he gasps in alarm. Pain that assails him rapidly lessens. Thank you. So softly his breath and less laboured. Thank you. Birigor tells you that the ogre appeared out of nowhere, killed the goblins who had dragged him into this clearing. I didn't know ogres were capable of acts of that, he said, wincing as he shifted his weight. Or maybe I'm not remembering what really happened. I don't know why the goblins attacked us. I had nothing of value on that wagon save my son and horses. Still, the ogre undoubtedly saved me from those fiends. Birigor falls silent, closes his eyes. You instinctively reach down and stirs him, shaking him by your shoulders to keep him conscious. He looks at you and smiles weakly. You've got to get out of here. I think I can make it with your help. I have to find my son. Birigor proves bulkier, more difficult to support than you had first imagined. Despite his weakness, his considerable weight and the treacherous footing, you manage to prop him up against your shoulders. You slowly and cautiously make your way out of the forest. The track you follow on your way to the wood is now largely obscured by blurring snow, making it almost impossible to follow. Listening to your instincts, however, you eventually find your way back to the road, stepping out of the wood only a dozen yards. Now, this thing is swollen. From the abandoned wagon is now nearly dark. After having your charge in a seat position against one of the wagon wheels, you glance in both directions on the lonely road. The sun is falling steadily now, making the chance to see more than a few dozen yards in any direction. I have to find Iverson, gasped Birigor, glancing up at you. If you can help me up again, I think we should go toward Hawklor. He was headed that way. Don't want him out there alone somewhere. You immediately quashed that notion, telling Birigor that he's too weak to make even short trek to the village. When you announced that you will immediately set off after your son, he managed to smile and nods. Yes, you're right. I'd only slow things down. Go after him, my friend. Go. Aww. Something hard and cold smashed the side of your head with a bone-jarring force, sending you toppling sideways to the snowy ground. How rude. Up in the blood-strewn, now with blood now dripping down your face. You roll to your right nimbly, gain your feet, spinning to face your unknown assailant, 2 cave goblins, opposed to the vile creatures clutching a long curved cudgel. Spattered with your blood, standing only a few yards from you, snarling viciously, the cruel gaze fixed on you. Still reeling from the blow, you command Borough to stay back as you unsteadily draw yourself into a combat-ready stance. Who's dead? You're dead. Stepping away from the corpses, slain goblins, you turn and make your way to Beagle's side. The fur-clad man remains slumped up against the wagon wheel, clutching at one of the deep wounds in his left side of his torso. He wrenches the cost next to him and tells you they didn't. You need to find Everstone, he says, before collapsing in the valley. I pray that he's made it Hawklor. Leave me and go after him. You have to find him. It's making certain there's no other goblins. Tell Birgo that you heard of and such for your son. He nods and thanks you and closes his eyes. As you rise from your crouched position, your eyes are suddenly drawn to something in the west. You take several steps along the road and your eyes straining against the frigid snowy gleam. You attempt to make out the indistinct shape slowly but steadily coming your way. It's Everstone. Having expected to face more of the vile goblins, you remain again its guarded stance, your keen eyes fixed on the dark form resting upon you through the falling snow. And a few moments later, when the shape is revealed to be several moving figures, the foremost of which clutches a glowing lantern, a profound sense of relief washes over you. In minutes, a group of 7 men emerge from the wintry gloom with that. The head of the armed procession is perhaps Hawklor's most renowned resident, Spearpool, the proprietor of the Stoneback Tavern, is a young lad at this side who immediately rushes over and embraces Birgo. The 8th man appears after darkness in the back group, holding a cut reins of the horses that are obviously hitched to Birgo's wagon. The animals seem to be agitated but otherwise unharmed. I can't tell you how glad we are to find you here, cried Spearpool, striding over and meeting you in the shoulder cross. That lad came busting in the tavern with stories about goblins, all out of breath, and well, here we are. Let it not be said that we have let such things pass without taking proper action, and I'll say it again, glad we are to find things well in hand. You just learned that when Everstone reached the Stoneback Tavern and relayed news of the goblin, checked the entire common room, so they took up arms and followed Spearpool out into the snowy night. For the first time we've had to run those fiends out of our borders, says Spearpool, brandishing a long iron rod. I suppose you've taken care of that, though, and speaking of myself, I'm not sorry to have missed it. I'd have been happy to help, but I certainly am not sorry to have missed it. And the storm worsening all present, directed by Spearpool's loud, authoritative voice, set about preparing to transport Birgo to Hawklor. After a bit of wrangling and a couple of minor injuries and a fair amount of cursing, the team is hitched somewhat, and Birgo is led into the wagon. Hold on, shouts Spearpool, waving everyone aboard. A farmer named Yurik takes the reins, the wagon launches off along the snowy road. Seated next to the supine Birgo, he watches his young son, Everstone, tries his best to come as far as the wagon rumbles and mouses toward Hawklor. He reassured the lad that the father will survive and recover from this ordeal. So looks up at you and nods, though he can tell he remains extremely worried. Just hold on, you lot, said Spearpool, as the first faint light in the village comes into view up ahead. We'll be in where the fire can warm us before you know it. We'll set them up in front of the herd. Someone fetch Talaro. Nursing's only a few hops from here. Who'll go? He's the one we want tending his wounds. A couple of hours later, as you sit your feet pushed out towards the crackling blaze that fills the Stoneback fireplace, you're approached by Spearpool. The tavern keeps sighs as he takes a seat next to you and brusquely rubs his hands while holding them to the fire. We've all seen nights colder than this, he says. Was there something in the air tonight, a bit more bite than usual? Of course, it's not accustomed to wandering out in... I'm not accustomed to wandering out in storm like we did earlier. It seems I can't keep the fire hot enough to thaw myself. Glance over at Birgo, lying atop a heap of furs on the opposite side of the hearth. He seems to be making a grand recovery. His wounds will take time to fully heal, but he's managed to survive the savagery of his cruel assailants. Basking in the fire's warm glow, his wounds expertly treated by Talaro, he appears to be regaining strength with every minute that passes. A sudden tug at your left sleeve says to startle you, and you turn to find Everstone, Birgo's young son, standing at your side with his eyes welling with tears. Lad throws his arms around you and hugs you tightly, and as he steps back and turns to leave, he softly mutters, "Thank you." When he is back to his father's side, Spearpool nudges you. Look at your host and find him smiling. Now, that just made it seem a bit less chilly, he said. And it just goes to show that not all of life's adventures about dragon halls and castles floating up on the clouds, are they? As it turns out, Birgo makes a full recovery and is soon once more with his family tending his plot of land on the outskirts of Hawklor. Now, whenever your ventures taken in the village, you can sometimes stop to pay Birgo a visit. There's a small, comfortable dwelling on the edge of the forest. You always give a warm welcome and treat it a meal fit for a thane. The rugged farmer quite often, the chagrin of his wife, always seems eager to recount the harrowing events that took place in the snowy desert along the lonely forest road east of Hawklor. And the end. That's nice. I always like when I get thanked because I'm bang like that. So yeah, we're just gonna end the episode there. We have a few more adventures here. I didn't mean to press that. I meant to go to adventures. So yeah, there's a few more, but this will turn into probably 3 or something. So I'll probably do the Rough Knight and the Hunted Man, and they will work on the Giants ones. But hey, thanks so much for hanging out and joining me. You know what I'm gonna say. Peace.